Absalom was dangerously gifted. He seems to have been good-looking. And, in addition, possessed a pleasing address. As the son of a great king, he received enough of honor and attention to have satisfied an ordinary heart, but the spirit of ambition crept in, and craving to be first, he laid his plans to dethrone his noble father and reign in his stead. From his character, sayings, and achievements we are not led to believe that he was an intellectually brilliant man, but what he lacked in brains he made up in handshaking. Neither statesman nor warrior, he became a kind of politician, and taking his stand in the gates of Jerusalem, met all the country farmers, traveling businessmen, as well as people in trouble, coming to town for relief, and with affected interest and pity inquired into their burdens and busied lives, and expressed most heartily his regret that he was not king, that he might personally help every one of them. How sorry he was that their cases had been overlooked so long. How sad. He felt that people of such merit and excellency had not been recognized at the first glance and given all they wanted. Oh, if he were only king, etc., etc. How plainly we can see the erring Absalom, who had bidden farewell to his self-respect, beaming down upon the small man, cuddling close to the strong man, and looking up with admiring glances at the tall man, while his right member was manipulated in the handshaking business with the regularity and monotony of a churn dasher. As the young prince was at this work for several years, he doubtless became quite a proficient, and can be properly regarded as a kind of champion in the business, and a federal head to a large body of imitators who have followed in his steps. At one time he thought that politics had captured and monopolized this most intellectual and deeply edifying art, not to say science, of shaking hands. But the clergy in great numbers have adopted it, and can actually put the electioneerer and party man to shame in the way they use the right hand, and now the left, and sometimes both together, while the stereotyped smile is on the face, and throat ha's, and unctionless God bless yous proceed in a ceaseless stream from the lips. Moreover, we never saw a preacher post himself in the vestibule of his church and shake hands with his departing congregation without thinking of Absalom standing in the deep, cavernous gateways of Jerusalem while his arms revolved over the heads and around the bodies of people like a small-sized windmill. We do not doubt that there are faithful servants of Christ who in some degree feel this is the only way they can get in touch with many of their members, and they do it in a right spirit, and with the best purposes in their heart. But even here we question whether it is the wisest and most effective way to reach and hold the people. The query may well be asked. Is it the way to reach them? And does it hold them? The preacher called and anointed of God is an ambassador of heaven. He represents the holiest of causes, and the most exalted of kingdoms. He is an envoy from the King of Kings. His office is too great, his calling too sacred, to be brought down to lower planes. His appeals are addressed to the highest powers of man, and his messages affect the eternal interests of his hearers. His greatest influence is certain to be felt by the people through his delivering the words of God and bearing himself as becomes a representative and messenger of heaven. The instant such a servant of the Lord changes, and from appearing and speaking in the pulpit like an ambassador from the skies, is suddenly seen in the vestibule or church door looking, talking and shaking hands like a politician, a great drop and let down has taken place, and the very congregation which are handshaking brother is trying to ingratiate feels it, and away down in their hearts think less of him, and wish he had not done so. In a 17 years pastorate in city churches we had many thousands of devoted friends, and as true to us as members of the church have ever been known to be to their pastors, and yet we avoided playing the politician at the door, or reproducing the picture of Absalom seesawing his arms in the gates of Zion. The rule should be to escape to the study after the sermon and service are over, and leave the message to work in the minds and hearts of the audience. We should dread to dissipate it in any way, by a lighter manner, social chit-chat, or even by questions and answers concerning the people's temporal and home affairs. In the days that the pastor is drawn or compelled to remain a while after preaching, it is better to stand inside the chancel, and have the people come to him. There is no pride or arrogant conduct in this, but to rush over the church after a few would be to grieve others, and to run after all would create the handshaking politician. So, remembering whose servant and messenger he is, let the preacher stand in his place, and receive kindly and indiscriminately all who come to him for counsel, comfort or assistance of any kind. In making an analysis of the handshaking business in Absalom's case, we find there was in it treachery, disloyalty, falsehood, cowardice and selfishness. In studying the practices followed by the politician, we observe the elements of selfishness, falsehood and treachery, with an appearance of personal devotion, yet the office seeker does not care a picayune for the man with whom he is gripping hands, and as he is using him and his vote simply as a means to a personal and selfish end. Both untruthfulness and duplicity are in the handshake. As for the man in the pulpit, it would be wise and well if he stopped to consider and weigh the motives which have turned him into a hand manipulator in the church gate. What is really at the bottom of all this? Apparent interest in and affection for the departing citizens of Zion? If the handshaking is for personal popularity, then there is disloyalty to the king, and lo, Absalom is before us. If the act is performed to smooth and soothe those who had been convinced and aroused by the message of truth just delivered, then there is treachery towards God, and cowardice towards man. If it is to stand well with the bread and meat providers of the church, whom when treated to unusually cordial handshakes give beaver hats, gold watches, and trips to Chautauquas and seashore resorts, then here is self again, falsehood and additional betrayal of the truth. If still baser uses are made of the hand in the church door, then another son of David is made to appear who was even worse than Absalom. What a tremendous moral difference there was between the hand grasp of Jonathan with David in the woods, and that of Absalom with the people in the gates of the city. The first was to help a good man who was persecuted and oppressed and all but overcome with his life of loneliness, sorrow and privation. The second was given in intense egotism, and not only to help no one but himself, but also to pull down from his throne a better man than himself. It is truly a fearful thought to see how a life of evil can be covered up by an appearance of sanctity, hate masked with a smile, deep inner dislike coated over with a sweet accent and sugary manner, and while one hand is laid in affectionate conciliation on the beard of an unfortunate Abner, the other hand of a Joab delivers the dagger of mortal hate into the vitals of his brother. Poor Absalom. With all his handshaking he came to failure, defeat and a fearful death. The Bible says that bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days. He was a deceitful man, and died in the very beginning of manhood. He evidently did not reach the end of the first half of his days. Our eyes have been for numerous years fixed with a melancholy interest on the handshaker. And no matter what he obtains by it, whether chosen governor, constable or bishop, or becomes the idol of a city congregation, neither the elected seem to obtain security and permanence of position, nor the electors the great blessings they expected. Popular favor soon passes away. Offices weary one, and wear out the wheels of life very quickly. Reverses are certain to come. The handshaking Absalom of the world and church cannot meet successfully the great battles and struggles that befall the human race. They speedily pass away. And then the temporarily forgotten Davids are remembered and sought after. And behold, men of character rather than popularity, of solid worth rather than showy, shallow gifts, are received through opening gates of welcome and enthroned with gratitude to God in the hearts of a true and faithful Israel.